Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the things I've done really well in homeschooling the last 4 years, and some of the mistakes or things I've done wrong. So as you can see, I'm filming in not my usual location. I'm in my bedroom right now because my son decided to turn the dining room into a school bus station. So that's why the background is a little different right now. But I want to get this video filmed for you. So I was recently looking over, in preparation for another video, the English language arts, what I've used pre-K through 6th grade. Link that up above if you want to see it. But I was going through my notes because I do take, every year I have, schedules and curriculum that we use for every single year. And like I said, this is our 4th year of homeschooling, so I have a pretty detailed list of all the things I've done over the years. And in preparation for making that video, I was kind of going through the things we've used. And it got me thinking about some of the things I did really well and some of the things that going back or in the future I would change. So I thought that would make an interesting video to kind of talk about the past 4 years, some things I've done really well in homeschooling and some things I could have done better or will do better in the future. So I'm going to start with the things I've done really well and then move into the things that I could have done better or I made mistakes with. So the first thing that I did really well, at least in the last 4 years, is consistency in my homeschooling. This is something that I think is essential for homeschooling. I think it's kind of a foundation to make, progress. You do have to have that consistency in place. And I think it's something that's often overlooked in homeschooling, or at least, on social media, because it's not glamorous. It's not gonna sell you things. It's not gonna fit that niche that a lot of people on YouTube are trying to, use. But it's really essential, and it's something I'm actually really good at. Planning schedules. I've always had a schedule for all my kids every year. We've always had, what are we doing next? We've always been able to make a plan, implement that plan, and everything get done every single year. And I'm really proud of that. The consistency I've been able to provide for my kids has been essential for their progression in learning. So number 2 that I've done really well is I've always set really clear expectations for my kids in homeschooling and in, our regular life as well. And I do plan on making a video kind of outlining how I set expectations and kind of how I make sure my kids meet those expectations. And I do think there can be confusion about what expectation is versus what a responsibility is. So for example, responsibility would be, my kids are responsible for cleaning their rooms every day before electronic time. That would be a responsibility. The expectation is, okay, what does a clean room look like? And that will look different to each of my 3 kids, and the scaffolding, the steps to get there will look different for each one of my kids. And that's the same thing with homeschooling when it comes to expectations. Kids need a clear idea of what you mean by something. You can't just say, go do your schoolwork. Well, what does that mean? Or go write a paper. But what does that mean? What is the end result? What do you want specifically for them? And then kind of backtracking from them, do they have the skills necessary to implement that, to be able to write that paragraph or that paper or do that math sheet independently? Have you provided the skills necessary and the scaffolding to get to that place? So that's something I think I've done really well in the last 4 years. I'm definitely starting to see kind of the fruits of that labor, because my daughter, my oldest, is in 6th grade, and she does do a lot of things independently this year, but because we've had such clear expectations throughout the years, that I really feel like I've put, some guardrails up for her. So think of like a train, right? You're not gonna go veering off the train tracks. I've set some really good rails for her to follow, that when we've hit these preteen years where hormones and emotions are starting to affect things, she can, weave in and out, but because I've set really clear expectations for her, she knows where to remain. She's not going off the rail, because I do think it's really easy for this age group to push back. And that's not anything to do with the curriculum, not anything to do with homeschooling. That's just, their bodies, their minds are changing. Things are changing, so it's very easy to veer off track. And I think if you don't have those clear guidelines set for your child, the parameters in which your homeschooling operates, that it's very easy for them to be like, well, I'm not going to do that. Especially if you, in their elementary years, have this mentality or is sending this messaging to your child that school isn't important, we'll push it off till tomorrow, oh, I don't understand this, or I'm not prepared, so I'm not going to teach it, let's just forget it. If that's the messaging they're getting in their elementary school years, that when you hit those middle school, high school years, you're going to get a lot more pushback, and it's going to be so much harder to deal with a preteen pushing back with their emotions and the hormones, and you haven't set those guidelines for your homeschooling yet. It's going to be a lot harder to go back and set those guidelines when they're preteens and they think they know everything because you will have pushback. You know, my oldest is like the poster child for homeschooling. She listens very well. She'll do anything you put in front of her. But even now, she's getting those preteen things happening, and I'm getting pushback, what we call ennui. If you've ever seen Inside Out 2, it's kind of in the head, the emotions are, it's the teenage emotion where they're like, oh, I don't want to do anything, really, and kind of like dragging and rolling the eyes. That's the ennui coming out, and that's completely normal. So if they have those guidelines to ping pong through, it'll be a lot easier for everyone. So I definitely have set clear expectations from, you know, even with my 4.5-year-old, he has expectations all the way up to my 6th grader, and I've been able to, in the last 4 years, see how that has benefited our homeschooling a lot. But stay tuned, I will make a video on that. Number 3 is math. This is something I think I've done really well, and this is a combination of luck and pushing myself. So I'm lucky to have stumbled upon dimensions. I remember I was watching Ode to Abode videos, and that's kind of where I got the idea to do it, so I'm very thankful that she put those videos out and continues to talk about dimensions. But we chose that in the beginning. If you're new to my channel, my oldest went to public school K through 2nd grade. She came home for 3rd grade and has been homeschooled since. But that's where we went with. And, you know, it was a harder choice, especially because I think math was probably my most insecure subject because of just my experience. I think a lot of us have similar experiences where we weren't taught really well, or we were taught, you know, just to regurgitate the information, but weren't really taught to think about it or what behind that. Like, you know, we're taught our addition and subtraction facts, but we're not taught really what that means. So I was very apprehensive about math. And luckily, Dimensions has really pushed me to kind of address the feelings I had about math, and realize that yes, I can not only do math, I can teach it to my child, but I have to be willing to put the work in. I have to be willing to understand, you know, how this math is working and not give up, not, you know, just go with something like teaching textbooks or video lessons, and really take it upon myself to understand this better so I can convey it to my child. And I think that sends a really good message to your kids too, that you're willing to learn, even, you know, as an adult, you're willing to take this on. This is a struggle, this is hard, but you can absolutely do this. And my daughter has seen me, you know, struggle through this math and in trying to understand it better. But that's a positive thing, to use some of those doubts we have to help force us to really address the issues we have with math to better understand it. Those are all positive things to be teaching our kids. But I did have to dive deep and learn, you know, about math and mathematical mindsets. There's an awesome book if you're looking to understand more. But I've really addressed my issues with math, and I've really learned a lot from Dimensions, and it's been a wonderful program for all 2 of my kids right now. My son will eventually try it as well. But we got really lucky, and we have been consistent with our math program for the last 4 years. I'm really proud of that because I've seen a lot of progress, especially with my oldest, who struggled with math and confidence issues with math. She's gotten so much better with that. And I do think a lot has to do with the fact that we've used Dimensions for so long. Next one is inclusive. So I've provided a really good inclusive environment, both, you know, resources and our discussion, and that's something I'm really proud of that we've done the last 4 years. You know, we always have social justice. That's a core subject in our homeschool, and it always has been, always will be. But the fact that I'm able to, you know, even with my kids at a very young age, provide different perspectives, ideas, you know, real history, we're talking about really important things. And, you know, again, seeing that progression of my oldest from 3rd grade to 6th grade, I can really see the empathy and the kindness that that has produced in them, that they're seeing the world more realistically, which can be difficult at times, yes, but they're also able to empathize more because they're aware of the things going on. And we've covered so much more than I did that I didn't even encounter until, you know, my adult life. And it was kind of like a shock that, oh, this isn't really how things are. So I'm really proud that we have been able to do that over these last 4 years and continue to do it. And I do think it will help form them into the people they're meant to be. The next one is I've had a really good curiosity mindset with homeschooling. So what does that mean? It means kind of figuring out, okay, but if this isn't working, why? Or if they're struggling with this, what's going on? Or if I don't understand a math concept, why is that? So really looking for the reason or the why behind things, I think, is essential, because it's very easy, especially with social media, what you see, to just drop something, change something, instead of really looking for what's triggering that, what's the reason behind it. And luckily, this is kind of my default mindset that when I don't understand something, I research it a ton and try to understand both the perspective and the different things that encompass this subject area or this thing I'm trying to learn about, because I want to understand it better. And that's how I really approach my homeschooling. I made a video, I'll link it up above, recently about how I adjust the curriculum for my kids to meet their specific needs. It's not about changing curriculum, but learning how to adjust. I think there's way too much emphasis put on things like learning styles and not nearly enough emphasis put on teaching strategies. You can teach almost anything to any child. You just have to know how to be able to convey that information. And some of that is, how your child learns, but also a big chunk of that is how you're able to convey that information, how you teach, and learning different teaching strategies based on the child you have in front of you. So that has been really essential. And it has required a lot of work on my part, the learning, the researching, tons of books, looking into cognitive development. When my youngest daughter was diagnosed with ADHD, really learning how her brain works and how her individual brain works, not just what, the books say ADHD is, because there's a broad spectrum of that, but really honing in and, okay, this is how the brain works, but this is how specifically her brain works, and really being able to cater to the child you have in front of you, instead of taking this blanket, this is not working for the child, obviously something's wrong, I'm gonna try a new curriculum, or looking for the reason behind that and being able to pinpoint, whether it be gaps or things they don't understand or developmentally something is going on. That to me is the essence of homeschooling right there, that when we're able to adjust the curriculum to make it fit the needs of our child, not by changing the curriculum. Sometimes it is supplementing some aspects of the curriculum, absolutely, but being able to figure out what your specific child needs and being able to deliver that through your teaching strategies. So I've really been thankful that I have approached homeschooling with that curiosity mindset. And the last positive would be, I've been really good at balancing all three kids and their homeschooling schedules and their outside activities as well. But when I started with my third grader full-time homeschooling, my youngest daughter would be in preschool at that age. So I've never had really just one child homeschooling. So I've kind of always had to juggle at some point, but especially in the last year, bringing on my last child and learning how to juggle that, I think I've really done a good job with that. But again, because we have consistency and we have schedules, everybody knows what's expected of them, everybody can see visually what they need to do, there's no surprises, there's no what are you talking about, you never told me we were doing this type situations, that yes, I'm spending a good 2 hours ping-ponging between all three kids, but I've been able to maneuver it in a way where, when one kid's working on something independently, I'm working with another child, or the child's learning, you gotta wait for mom if you need to do that, or work on something you don't need mom for. So I've been really good at making sure everybody's getting their stuff done and nobody's being left behind. So I've been really good at juggling schedules. But again, I'm a really organized kind of planned person to begin with, so a lot of my natural skills have really helped with homeschooling. So those are the positive things I've really done well in the last 4 years. So let's talk about the things that I haven't done so well. So the first one, and I mentioned this in that English language arts video, the pre-K through 6th grade, what I've used, and that is spelling. So with my oldest, I did start her with spelling. We did the first couple levels of All About Spelling. She flew through them, super easy for her. And I was like, okay, she's a natural speller. So I didn't feel the need to really push spelling. But then, starting Phonetic Zoo this year, I'm realizing that she's doing, a lot more complicated words, that there was more to it than I realized, that she was doing a lot of it from memory and that she wasn't really familiar with all of the spelling rules, even though we had gone through them with All About Spelling. She was just able to produce the list from memory. So now I'm trying to backtrack and, learn some of those spelling rules, learn, lean into her strengths of being able to spell by memory, which is a great skill, but also learning some of those spelling rules, because I do think it's important, especially when you get to more complicated words. You need to have a basic understanding of that. So I wish I would have stuck with spelling, specifically all about spelling, and continued on with her through the levels, because I do think she would have a much better understanding of phonetics and spelling. The next one is, again, mechanics. So we use different language arts programs. My oldest has used Lightning Literature from 3rd grade through 6th, and that's been a wonderful program for her. And it does teach, mechanics, capitalization, punctuation, things like that, but not to the degree that she needed it. She needed more practice. And again, coming from the public school, there's almost, nothing that she had in this area. So dropping her into 3rd grade homeschooling Lightning Literature, I think there was this idea that you'd have a foundation in this already, and she didn't. So she needed more repetitive practice in the mechanics of writing. So punctuation and capitalization and things like that, that I wish I would have incorporated earlier or more intensely with her, knowing that she didn't really have a background in that. And then especially with my 7-year-old coming up here, that's something I'm more mindful in making that adjustment as needed. So the next one would be map testing. So this past school year, when she was in 5th grade, my 7-year-old would have been 1st. So I decided to map test them this year, especially since my oldest was going into middle school. I kind of wanted to know where she was at, any gaps that needed to be filled. I wish I would have started map testing earlier, because especially, bringing her home for that 3rd grade year, I think if I had map tested her first, I would have had a better understanding of some of the gaps. I was aware of some of them. I did, know she had some math gaps, and we really addressed that her first year of homeschooling. But again, I didn't recognize the grammar component of the math gap, or the grammar gaps that were in that. If I would have had her map tested, I think I would have recognized them earlier. So I do think it's important to have, third-party testing, because sometimes we're too close to the situation, or we're not aware of, what's going on enough to really see. Because especially if this is your first time teaching a child, there's some things you're going to miss just because you don't have the experience that, a lot of classroom teachers, 30 kids a year for, X number of years. You're going to have a lot more intuition when it comes to those things. So I think I would have benefited map testing her specifically when I first brought her home. And we did do it this past year, and we will continue it from here years on, because I do think it helps point out areas you're not always aware of, or help fill some of those gaps that this is an area that you need to work more on. So another thing is writing. I wish I would have introduced it earlier, but again, my 3rd grader coming home, she had little to no experience writing. And luckily, she took to structure and style really well her 3rd grade summer going into 4th grade. And that's just because, again, she's a go-with-it kid, but she also, naturally does really well with language arts programs. So she luckily was able to catch up and be able to do that without being taught the skills. She didn't really have the foundational skills yet. She was able to pick up on them with IEW, and because it's structured so much like her brain, it was really beneficial for her. But I wish I would have, and this is something I'm correcting with my 7-year-old, that, scaffolding slowly, writing, sentence. Luckily, we brought in different aspects like Michael Clay Thompson for my oldest, which really helped her understand how sentences work together. So I did bring in different areas to that, but I wish I would have scaffolded it more slowly each year so she could build upon it. And that's something I'm correcting with my youngest daughter now. But something I wish I would have done too is emphasis on writing through multiple areas, so cross-curricula. So she does really well with IEW, she does really well with writing her stories, but I come, when she's answering questions with her language arts or essay type questions in science, she gives me really short blurb answers. And I've come to realize that I haven't really set the expectation there that when I expect a writing, it has to be full, not just, 1 or 2 sentences. But that's an area I wish I would have covered writing and my expectations of writing through multiple subject areas instead of focusing on writing on just a certain subject. So next one would be a mistake I made is I wish I would have continued all about reading with my oldest child. So we did all about reading when she was 4 before going into kindergarten, and she was fluently reading when going into kindergarten. She was reading, her favorite series was Junie B. Jones books. She was reading that, so I didn't feel like I needed to supplement that because she was already ahead going into kindergarten. I didn't want to continue on and her not have anything to do in school. But I realize now, especially since she came home in 3rd grade for homeschooling, that the school didn't really teach, phonetic reading very well, and I don't think they really had the time to get into the depth of it. But I learned this through writing when she was doing Phonetic Zoo, that she doesn't phonetically spell. Like, she doesn't know what AR or a TH. She doesn't know what these blends are, or she doesn't remember them enough because she didn't have enough practice with them. And it does make spelling a lot harder if you forget or we're never really taught those blends, because there's a component of that to phonetic spelling. And I wish I would have continued all about reading and gone through the levels, because I can see, because my 7-year-old is now on level 3, halfway through level 3. She's going to have a lot easier time with things like spelling because she's had such a solid foundation with reading. I wish I would have continued supplementing reading for my oldest even when she went to public school. And the last one is, the mistake I made is math facts. So I remember talking way back when she was learning multiplication facts, my oldest, I talked about how I think it's more important that she understands what multiplication means than necessarily memorizing all the facts. And she did memorize the facts, and we did, math facts worksheets and math facts that stick, multiplication facts that stick with Kate Snow. She did all those things. She still has trouble remembering 7 and 8s now, but the rest she has down. But I'll have to say, gotta eat my words, I was wrong on that. Yes, you have to have all of your math multiplication facts memorized, because she is now in, she's doing really long problems with order of operations, and it's a lot of computing and it's a lot of symbols, and it can be overwhelming. It's a lot easier if those multiplication facts are, right there. I do think they should understand what the multiplication means. What does 5 times 5 mean? But they also need to be able to pull that information because the problems are getting so much longer. So I was wrong with that, and those who told me in the comments of that video that that's wrong, you're right. I was wrong with that. Math facts, specifically multiplication facts, have to be memorized, but I do think they have to have an understanding of what it means as well. So those are the things I've done really well in the last 4 years, and then some of the mistakes are things I didn't do very well in the last 4 years. And I'm sure there'll be, things I continue to do well and mistakes I continue to make, because no homeschooling is perfect by any means. But I think, like I said, the important thing is you're learning and you're growing in your homeschooling and not continuing to make those same mistakes, and being able to have a willingness to grow in your homeschooling. So if you have any specific questions, leave them in the comments below. If not, thank you for watching.